Our scripture lesson is taken from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, verses 13 through 21. And the translation is from the Greek. I would say, Andrew, Jesus may not have sworn in Greek. He might have sworn in Aramaic, right? It's possible. Okay. Let's not go down that rabbit hole. Then someone from the crowd said, "Teacher, tell my brother to give me my part of my inheritance." And Jesus responded, "What made you think that I am to be your debt collector?" And Jesus said to them, "Watch out for that monster greed, because your lives do not consist in an excess of possessions." Then Jesus told them this parable. There was once a very rich nobleman, and then his possessions produced a bumper crop. He kept thinking and arguing within himself, "What should I do now? I have no way of storing all that fortune. I know what I should do. I will pull down my old barns, and I will build bigger and better ones. There I will stash away all my crops and goods. Then I will say to my soul, 'My dear soul, now you are good for many years to come. Take it easy, eat, drink, be happy.' But then God said to him, 'You stupid fool! Right this very night they will mob you and rob you of your soul. Then who will inherit all that you have stashed away?' And so it is with those who squirrel away only for themselves and are not rich before God." So ends the reading.
Yes, this is an quite well-known parable from the Gospel of Luke. But we need to correct some common misunderstandings about this parable, which even leaked into some of the translations, and that was one of the reasons why I did my own. And they have also importance for a theological understanding of what is in front of us. From trying to jolt us, take us away from the spiritual, supernatural theism. So we can start, and my apology today will have more Greek. We started with children with Greek, and we'll have more Greek. So, but I will try to explain why it is important. So first thing is, it is not about a wealthy farmer. You can often hear it that it is about a wealthy farmer or parable of wealthy farmer or something like that. No, it is not. Even though it has been translated and captioned in some Bibles like that. Farmer would be called in Greek georgos, but that's not what is here, and for very good reason. In the parable, he is called simply anthropos plusios. That means man of money, a big possessions, or tycoon. You can even translate something like an plutocrat. Do I pronounce it correctly? Plutocrat, yeah, plutocracy. And then furthermore, it is not about just about a harvest from his fields. Again, you might think, where should it come from? But that's not what is in the Greek text. If it was in a field, we will hear about agros. You know it from agribusiness, for instance, and so on. Agros means simply a field. Those are cereal or vegetable fields. But that's not what is here. In this parable, it is called a chora, which means a territory, land of this rich man. Substantial expanse of land. And that brought forth a lot of fruits, not necessarily only in cereal harvest. Euphorein karpos, simply brought forward, bring richly forward fruits, and not only cereals, but many different harvests of fruits, olives, grapes, maybe even flax, like fiber. So now we understand that this is not about just a farmer on a family farm. He is an owner of latifundium. That's a technical term that was an ancient institution. And you have it actually on a bulletin cover. If you look on a bulletin cover is a mosaic from a little later time, but it gives you that kind of perspective of what this owner has. He has a lot of land, a lot of different operations going on. Latifundium is an ancient institution. It was a large estate with substantial economic operation, even processing of the fruit. Latifundia, that will be the plural, were economic engine of developed Hellenistic society. They applied the best production methods, we would call it nowadays scientific methods. They grew cereals and vegetables, but also cash crops. That was the main area of their interest. So growing olives, wines, fibers, as I mentioned, kept large flocks of animals. And because of their size and advanced management, they're replacing or elbowing out small family farms. Latifundia also needed a lot of work, either from poor laborers or from slaves. And you know, we know that this was happening, especially first it started in Palestine, it started in Judea, around Jerusalem. And during Jesus' time, this was going up to those hinterlands of Galilee. But small farmers were crowded out by these big possessions. They could not sustain their operations. And those were then those laborers we hear about in some of other Jesus's parables. So it starts clicking in. If you remember, for instance, that parable of that big owner, another latifundia owner, going and hiring workers on his vineyard, you know, and going in and always finding some laborers there. That tells you that there was an unemployment, by the way. And also that there were this many who originally used to have family farms and farm on them and were pushed out by this economic development. So this is the situation. And the closest to us would be probably like Caribbean sugar plantations or Louisiana or Alabama cotton plantations under slavery time, I mean. Like Central American hacienda economy or Texas ranches, some which could be as large as the entire state, like Rhode Island. It's true, it's the smallest state, but still, you know, imagine the land owning. So this rich man was an owner of latifundium, an agribusinessman. He was a landed gentry. Why did we spend so much time on this historic economic detail, you might ask? Because it is important for us and for our understanding of this passage furthermore. It has a theological reverberation through this story, not only because we are social justice church, and of course we have our doubts about especially these extremely rich people, and it can give some extra color to it, but there is a theological reason for what we are doing here. It has a theological implication, important theological consequence for us here. And that theological consequence here for us is that it is not God who is threatening that money bag with his death. It is not God who will take his life, literally his soul, his psyche or psyche. That is quite commonly misunderstood. And when you heard this story, you know, I heard so many commentaries, and even in some commentaries it is, and in some translations it is translated that plutocrat was warned that they will take your life. They will rob you of your soul. Sure, this can be a kind of like a clumsy way of using passive voice. Your life will be taken. But for that purpose, Luke is very gifted Grecist. He knows Greek. It is one of the highest Greek languages, Greek forms in the whole New Testament. So I doubt that he would allow something like this clumsy passive voice trickling through saying they will take. No, it is not, I will ask your soul back. It is not, your soul will be taken or will be asked out. No, it is, they will take your soul. Who are those they? It perfectly fits the context. He is a rich, successful, landed gentry. And those they are the robbers, the bandits, the insurgents. They might come from outside of his possessions. They might be his own slaves. Or some kind of a combination of those. Perhaps bandits with some inside help. But God is not the one who is taking his life. God is not even the one who is threatening him about his life being taken. God is the one who is giving the last warning. If you are thinking only about yourself and about your own future, you actually might not have any future. A warning with a special verbal jolt, calling him Aphron, fool, moron, stupid, non-thinking. And that is the problem of this stupid rich fool. He is very industrious. If you read it, you know, he has everything well thought through. He is industrious, forward-thinking, even able to take risks. In ancient times, that was not that common. He is really entrepreneurial. You know, when they had something settled, they rather stayed with what was settled. Here you have really that kind of scientific thinking almost. Like I mentioned, that the latifundia were driven by a development of agro-understanding. So he has all of that, but it is all about himself and about his own soul. In some respect, it has certain features of a prayer, but it is a prayer of a successful egotist. He prays not to God, but to himself. He makes plans only for himself, and he plans even to not only to do this and that and so on and so forth, but he also plans that he is going to congratulate to himself, just himself. His plantation might be ultra successful. His new storehouses might be full of stuff. His bank accounts and investment funds can be overflowing, we might say. He might be set for easy life. But all around him are those desperate people, the slaves on your own land, and poor laborers exploited by him. Their land taken from them, and now they are forced to work on their own, or what used to be their own land, for this rich guy. Exploited on his latifundium, his hacienda. His large land holdings were created from squeezing family farms out of business, repossessing them, exploiting their original owners. His success is built on sweat and tears and fears of his laborers and his slaves. And that tension cannot disappear. It's present and can boil up any moment in that rebellion. Or in our society, that investment economic bubble can burst and major crash can happen anytime. That is why God calls him a stupid fool. Because happy and harmonious lives in happy and harmonious societies cannot be built upon egotism only. When people speak and plan only for their own souls, that cannot really last. But thinking of others and planning for broader community, for sharing one's success with others, that is what the Bible calls storing the treasure in heaven. Because the life is not sustained only by the material wealth. It is sustained by well-balanced relationships with our neighbors, in our ability and willingness to share with others. The planning and the self-congratulating monologue with a soul becomes then, in a proper way, a thanksgiving to God. And if it is a thanksgiving to God, it's a prayer which is then opening eyes towards the neighbors. And a discovery of love and sharing and altruism. Caring for refugees, for hungry ones in our city, trying to help those who are disadvantaged by political wins or by economic or ecological distress. This week, we thankfully had that good news about the passing of legislation. It is not a major achievement, even though it was heralded as a major achievement, but it's great that we are at least moving a little bit from that thinking only of ourselves, thinking only for the riches, and opening up and caring for one another and caring for the environment, for the climate of our planet. Caring is the essence, which is here kind of silently being lifted up for us, building a community of mutual support, care for disadvantaged, for the marginalized, and then that is the parody of self-congratulating planning prayer into an active prayer in our everyday lives. And in that respect, I consider, for instance, our Thursday meal program as down to earth as it might be, and hands-on and physical. It is indeed a form of worship and form of prayer, where our members, together with the volunteers from our neighborhood, regardless of their faith or church affiliation or lack of, are praying and worshiping God with us. And that is a joyful, really, and hopeful message of our worship here on Sunday, and say one of the examples on Thursday afternoon. Amen.